Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to kind of an early version of Sunday Night Live. Again, I'm Jimmy Malloy, if we have not met, and this is my beautiful wife, Marilyn. Say hi.
Hi guys. I wasn't actually planning on being on this live, but I was supposed to be on my way to Turlock, but there was some change of plans, so I was like, I want to crash the party.
Yeah,
So
for
I'm
sure.
here.
So we wanted to say welcome, first of all, to everybody. A lot of old friends that we probably haven't had too much contact with recently, but also there's been a ton of activity as far as new people joining up with Unmasked Tulare County, and a lot of new folks to approve.
Yeah, so it sounds like there's a lot of chatter of certain things coming back, which we'll get into in just a little bit. But so I think with all that chatter, there's been a lot of kind of reigniting of the of the group, and so I have been actually extremely busy trying to approve everybody. So I apologize if I don't get to things right away. I'm not ignoring you. Um, it's just hard. It's a lot of work. I'm not
Yeah,
gonna lie.
for sure. So there has been a lot of chatter. We do want to say welcome to everybody who might be new with us. If this is your first time joining us for a live, we certainly want to say welcome to you, and we're glad that you're a part of the Unmasked family. And we hope that we can connect and meet you in person and all those fun things. So today, really, the reason for today's live is, like Marilyn said, there's been a lot of chatter. There's been a lot of conversations and articles and different things going on out there about masks and about mandates and about, even lockdowns or different things coming back. We know that there are a lot of people who are out sick. We know a lot of people who've been sick in the last couple of weeks. And so, there's definitely something out there that is impacting people, which is pretty typical actually for the first part of the school year. Once kids go back and everybody's back together from summer, I feel like as long as I can remember, there's always been a lot of sickness kind of at the beginning of the year. But now they get to call it COVID, and they have COVID tests that probably reinforce that and all that fun stuff.
We don't deny that people don't get sick.
Right, for sure. Yeah, I mean, like I said, we know personally lots of people who've reported that like half their church, wasn't in church because they, were out sick. There's a lot of people who are being sick right now. So with that, naturally, in this COVID or post-COVID era, there's a lot of conversation and probably reaction and overreaction when it comes to agencies and school districts and things like that, which is causing a lot of concern. Yes. And frustration and anticipation of what might come next, right? And so Marilyn and I were talking about it and said, it's probably a good idea to just get on here and have a conversation. Hopefully a fairly short conversation. We're not trying to take everybody's Sunday afternoon from them, but there were a few things that we just wanted to kind of talk about, and wanted to say real quick before we get started too much. Paul Belt, thank you for being in the comment sections, as you've been faithful with us for a long time, since the beginning. Mm-hmm. And so even though Paul Belt, the Visalia Unified School District trustee, has not abandoned us and is still, right there alongside of us. So Paul, thank you for joining us and kind of helping out in that comment section. If there's specific questions or any links that we refer to, Paul's really good about being great about that. So thank you for that. Again, we want this to be interactive. We're going to try to get into some of the comments or questions or concerns. One thing I do want to mention, we are streaming in multiple places at the same time. So sometimes it is hard to see all the comments from different places. And like on the screen that I'm looking at, that we're looking at, we can't necessarily see, for example, on Facebook, what the name is of the person who commented. So we might ask for some help on that from Paul or whoever, or Marilyn, but she's only seen it in one place too. So anyway, as far as technical stuff, hopefully this goes off without a hitch, and we should be good to go. So like I said, the reason for this whole spiel today is that there is a lot of chatter. There's a lot of, depending on what you're reading and where you're reading it or watching it or whatever, there's a whole plethora of expectations
Mhm.
And, it seems like a lot of people know exactly what's going to happen and all of that. And, you read two different people and two different people have totally different thoughts on that, right? And the truth of the matter is nobody knows what's going to happen. Nobody knows the extent of where we're going. Are we going to be masking up our kids again in school? Are we going to be dealing with all of these testing issues and vaccine requirements at school? Are we going to be, or at work? Are we going to be able to fly, without our masks? Are they going to try to lock us down again? The answer is nobody truly knows exactly what the extent is that we're coming into. And so we do think that it is important to be prepared for whatever comes, right? We don't want to live with our heads in the sand. We don't want to deny the possibility of different things. We've seen how this has gone in the past. It's likely that they could try to do the same kind of stuff in the future. We definitely don't want to be heads in the sand when it comes to this stuff. We want to make preparations and be aware of what may happen. But one of the things that I wanted to address today is something that I would call fear porn. So fear porn is something that happens on both sides of any issue, really. I mean, we think about fear, and typically those of us who are like-minded would think about folks that are wearing 2 masks in their car, riding by themselves, or jogging with their dogs, and you see their dogs' masks on, or people who are taking 18 COVID shots because they think that's going to save them somehow, or whatever. So there's a lot of ways that we think of fear, and we stand against that. We're opposed to that. We don't like those things. And so, we rightly, I think, stand opposed to that kind of fear. But one of the things that happens, and Marilyn and I have seen more and more of this as we've been on this journey, for the last few years, is that there's a lot of fear porn that happens on our side of things as well. And what I mean by that is, I'll give you 2 examples. So how many of you remember, you can raise your hands in the comments or whatever, how many of you remember when Governor Newsom was like missing for 10 days or 2 weeks, a year or 2 ago, right? So he caught COVID and all of a sudden he was like MIA, he was gone. And so a lot of us were just like, man, he probably had some kind of vaccine reaction because we knew that he had gotten vaccinated or boosted or something just prior to that. But there was a video that started circulating. And it was this video of him giving some kind of speech, and his face, on one side was all droopy and looking all distorted. And this thing went crazy viral, right? It was everywhere. And everybody's just like, oh my gosh, look what happened. He's showing these signs of vaccine injury and all this stuff. And, a lot of people were sharing this thing everywhere, and it totally went viral. Well, I was looking at it and I was kind of skeptical when I first saw it. And so I dug a little bit deeper, and I was actually able to find the original video before it was doctored, and there was none of that was really going on. And so I remember coming home and I was just like, Marilyn, this is crazy that I don't know why somebody would take a video and doctor it like that in order to, make a point, or in order to try to make things, seem like what they weren't. And it really made me realize at that point that it's not just on the other side where you see misinformation or incorrect information, or people are trying to scare you into all kinds of different stuff, but we have some of that going on our side as well. Fast forward to right now, today, there's an article that's going around. I think it actually originated with Fox News, and it was an article where they were talking about some comments that Joe Biden just made about asking Congress for more money to produce the next vaccine and all of this stuff. And the article was written in a way where it said, that, he's saying that they're going to mandate this new version of the vaccine or require it of all of the people. And that's kind of the gist of the article. But when you read his actual quote, the quote didn't say anything about mandating or requiring. He actually used the words recommended, that they were going to recommend these new vaccines to everybody. And now I'm not under any illusion that they won't try to mandate it. I think they probably will try to force and coerce and all of that stuff, getting everybody to take these jabs as they possibly can. But I think we have to be honest about those things. And what we realized, Marilyn and I were just talking about it over lunch, is that people, even on our side, and again, getting back to this fear porn thing, people, there's money in extremes. There's money to be made and there's fame to be had. The more you can kind of shake people up or, put something with shock value that's going to get shared and all of that stuff. Guys, there is a ton of money to be made in the conservative movement. There's tons of money to be made on our side of things when it comes to masking and comes to freedom and it comes to all that stuff. There are people out there who are making boatloads of money and who have gotten extremely famous over being on our side of this issue. And what we know is that money corrupts and fame corrupts. And, that's one of the reasons that Marilyn and I really kind of stepped out of the spotlight over the last year is that, we started to experience just some of that, where you had people come up on the streets and be like, oh, hey, I know you guys and you're doing such a good thing and all that. And you feel good about being recognized and you feel good about some of those things. On the money side, we've never taken a dime from Unmasked Tulare County. We've put in a lot of money, never taken a dime, but it would be easy for people to start. I mean, you can write books, you can do podcasts, you can do, all kinds of these different things and literally make a ton of money. And we've seen a lot of people, we're not going to name names or anything, but we've seen a lot of people who probably started out very genuine and started out, really wanting to do some help and got a taste of the fame or got a taste of the money. And all of a sudden, either compromised or started putting out things that would get clicks, but maybe are not entirely true. And, it's a very easy thing to do. And we need to just be real about those kind of things. And we need to guard, what we take in and what we consume. So there's a fine line between staying informed, and we encourage everybody to stay informed. We encourage you to stay up to date, not keep your head in the sand on what's going on, but guard what you consume. Make sure you fact check things, do a little bit of digging before you just accept something as truth or as reality. Realize that there are people out there on the other side and on our side that are profiting off of the way we consume their media. And so just understand that. And that's kind of the first thing that we wanted to talk about. Fear, like if something is driving you into fear, and that being that you're, debilitated, you can't think of anything else. Like this is what consumes you day in and day out. Like if you're living in that way where you can't just jump out of that, you're probably being consumed by fear. And so we want to just encourage everybody that, staying informed is incredibly important. Staying informed is something that we all need to do, but it can cross over really easy. And I think it's something that each of us need to be honest with ourselves about and just say, hey, is this something that's taking too much of my mindset or too much of my thoughts, too much of my attention and whatnot. So just be encouraged, guys. There's no need to live in fear regardless of what's going on. None of us want to go back. None of us want to do the lockdown thing again. None of us want to go beyond that. But, for those who are Christians, we are believers in Christ. We are believers that he has still got our backs. Those who fear the Lord can sleep easy at night. And, we do. We don't fear all of these things, even though we recognize that they might be coming. So I want to talk about some practical things here today. I'm seeing that comments on Facebook are not running for some reason.
No, I'm replying to Kenny right now. I think what that is I think this is being shared on the Facebook page, our Unmasked Tulare County page, and not our group. So those that are, there's different ways to watch it, and I think Kenny is on the page, or you can view it on Restream, which is going to be in our group. And I think more people are on there. And then there's also YouTube. So I think he's commenting in a different group.
Oh, okay.
And that's why, does that make any sense? I didn't explain it very well.
So again, one of the hiccups with streaming in multiple places is that sometimes the comments get wonky and all that kind of stuff. I do see stuff. I think I'm seeing all the YouTube comments. Pamela, I see you there. Hi, good to see you. You're asking about the Readly Lab. Yeah, we can get to that probably at the end. Excuse me. But yeah, thank you again for everybody who's joining us and all this fun stuff. So we do want to talk a little bit about preparation, and we want to talk about things that we can do to be prepared. Again, none of us know the extent of what's going to happen. It could be very little that comes on that changes anything for us, or it could be, this fall and winter brings a complete lockdown and stuff like they were before. So that being said, what kind of stuff can we do? What kind of stuff can we do with our own lives? What sort of things should we expect from, say, our elected officials? I know the first time around we were really heavy on going into school board meetings and county supervisor meetings and even going to Sacramento and lobbying for all of this stuff. And I don't want to discourage anybody from doing those things. Those are all important parts of the civic process, right? We need to be engaged in our civic process. So when it comes to school boards, let's continue to talk to our school board members and our staff, or if you're a teacher, talk to your principals about these things. When it comes to county boards and city councils and all of those things, be engaged, be in conversation with your people. But all of that being said, I think we have a pretty good idea what we're going to get from most elected boards, right? And that's going to be more of the same. We presented arguments, we presented tons of people, we presented all kinds of different stuff to these various agencies to just be stared at and looked at and said, well, it's the law, or, well, they're telling us we have to do this, or, well, we just have to comply. And I don't really, to be honest, have any reason to believe that anything different is going to happen this go around. We do have a couple extra elected officials that can maybe prove me wrong. Like Paul Belt, you're there in Visalia Unified, and hopefully you're going to be able to have some great influence on what happens there. Greg Meister, out in Porterville, is doing great things on Porterville City Council. Raymond Beltran, same thing. So they've got a pretty good, base there at this point. But by and large, we feel like, if they just complied before, they're probably just going to comply again. And so for us, looking to our officials, looking to our elected officials to solve these problems is naive. And we need to understand that if anybody's going to stop this stuff, it's going to be us. And it's going to be us banding together to do things to refuse to comply and allow people to realize that this isn't going to fly again. Like, we're not going to do this again. And so we wanted to talk a little bit about what does that look like moving forward for members of our group and members of our community and beyond. Like, what does it look like for us to not comply? Like, what do we need to be thinking about? What sort of actions do we need to be planning and be ready for in the case that these things go down again? And one of the things that we've noticed over the years and with this group is there's a lot of people who believe the same way that we believe, right? We go out into the community and they're like, yeah, this stuff is trash. It's garbage. Like, we should not be doing this. We stand with you. We should not be complying with any of this stuff. And we've met some amazing people who hold the line and stand firm and, have really taken a leadership role in the community, as far as saying no to things that are unjust. But we found that the vast majority of people, and of course, nobody on this live would fall into this category, but a lot of people will look at things and say, you know what, our kids should not be wearing masks at school, for example. And we'd say, well, then let's pull them out of school. Like, let's have a day or a week or something where we're just not sending them to send a message. And a lot of times the response that we would get is, I can't.
Yeah.
Right. Or it would be, my job is going to make me get the jab or whatever. And I don't want to do that. I can't do that. But and we say, well, can you stand up can you file a religious exemption? Can you take a stand or quit your job or do any of those? And a lot of times the response that we get is, I can't. Because of whatever the situation is in life, and everybody's situation is different for sure. But over and over and over again, we felt like when it came time to take action or take a stand or hold the line, we often heard the words, I can't. And so the kind of difficult conversation that we need to have today is the difference between I can't and I won't, right? Because every one of us is adults. Every one of us is a free being who gets to make decisions every single day in our lives. And we either reap the benefits or we suffer the consequences of those decisions. And so I get up on Monday morning and it's time to go to work. And so I can tell Marilyn, you know, I can't stay up late tonight because I have to go to work tomorrow. And, you know, we've all made comments like that. The truth of the matter is the can't and the have to are not really true. It's the choices that I'm making. Of course, I'm going to go to work tomorrow because we need to provide food on the table. And I'm going to do that. I've made the choice that, you know, not living in poverty is greater than, you know, my desire to just stay home and veg all day, right? So I'm making the choice and I'm saying I will go to work tomorrow because that's the right thing to do. So when it comes to freedom, let's talk about freedom for just a second. What is freedom? Is freedom having the government never tell us things that we don't want to hear? Is freedom like never having people try to lord stuff over us or put us into a box or, you know, keep us from doing different things? I don't know that that's necessarily freedom. I think freedom is positioning ourselves in life to where we are free to make the choices that we want to make. And we've positioned ourselves in a place where we can do that. Right. So, for example, and I'm not trying to toot our own horns, but we saw this coming, you know, a couple of years ago. And Marilyn and I have structured our family life differently than it was pre-COVID. Pre-COVID, we both worked full-time jobs. We made, you know, pretty good money. We were doing pretty much whatever we wanted to do at that point. You know, both of our kids were in public school. Like we were living what I would say is the typical American life, right? For a married, you know, family of four and doing our thing. And when this stuff started happening, we realized, you know, we're not really free to do what we want, because if we're going to live this life that we have built, like that means both of us have to work. Like we have to have enough money to do this. That means that, you know, our kids have to go to public school because that's who else would watch them during the day. Like that's babysitting and in addition to education. And, you know, we started making some decisions and some hard choices and some sacrifices to be able to actually have the freedom. That way, if something does come again, we were just talking about at lunch, if they lock us down, that doesn't really impact us at this point, because we've kind of taken ourselves out from underneath their control by making difficult decisions, by making sacrifices, but preparing ourselves to be able to live a life of freedom. And so I wanted to just kind of mention that, because a lot of times our I can'ts are really I won'ts.
Yeah.
Because we refuse to alter lifestyle. We refuse to, well, maybe I have two $700 car payments and a $3,000 mortgage. And so really I'm a slave to my job and I'm a slave to making money because that's the lifestyle that I want to live. And I'm sorry if I'm offending anybody, but I do want to speak out, you know, reality and truth here. If we want to live free, we've got to be willing to make changes, and we've got to be willing even to make sacrifices in order to be able to live in the freedom that we say that we want. And so I say all that just to lead into talking about a few things real quick that we can do, or that we need to think about ahead of mandates and masking and vaccines or shots and potential lockdowns or any of those things. So what kind of things do we need to be thinking about? Do you need to be thinking about prior to any of these things coming into play? The first thing is, for those who have kids, like, let's be thinking about that. Most of our kids are in public schools, right? And unless you've gone into homeschooling like we have, then, you know, you are going to be dealing with public school decisions, right? And for any of you who have gone the homeschool route, you know, we just finished our first year in the homeschooling community. Fantastic. We've met amazing people, and it's just been a wonderful experience.
Yeah.
But if you have kids that are in school, in public schools, there's a very real possibility that you're going to be facing things like mask mandates, maybe facing things like testing to be able to come to school. You might be facing things like, you know, even shutdowns, right? So we've heard of some schools, we've probably all seen the articles where there are 3 school districts at this point in the nation that have shut down because of COVID/RSV/whatever, and they've just had too many people out sick. we've seen a lot of that, and we probably will see more of that. And so for each of us who have children, maybe who have grandchildren, whatever the case might be, we have to decide now, what is the line for us? What is the point? Are we going to send our kids back to school in masks? Like, are we cool with that if they mandate it? Are we going to say, well, I can't pull them out of school because, I have to work and they have to be there and, all of the things? Like, are we just going to send them back? Like, are we good with that? If you're not, then I would encourage you to make those arrangements now. Do you have somebody on standby? Do you have like a group of people maybe, who could organize and say, okay, I'll stay home on Monday, you guys stay home on Tuesday, and so forth. Like, what does that look like for you? Do you have a neighbor or a family member or a relative or somebody who could help out with the kids? Let's start having those conversations now so we have a plan. I do believe that one of the biggest ways that we can impact the school districts is, and anybody else, we're going to keep our kids home. Like, we're not going to subject them to having to wear those masks. Like, guys, we're seeing the impacts even right now that this stuff has had on our kids over the last few years. Mm-hmm. You talk to any counselor or psychologist and they're just inundated and overwhelmed. Anybody who works with kids in general, you can see that there's just a difference in the kids. Like, they're droopy. A lot of them are depressed. They're experiencing anxiety. They've got just all kinds of crazy issues going on. And a lot of it stems from the uncertainty and the unknown and the fact that, oh my gosh, my life could just get upended again. I could have to wear a mask everywhere I go. And, this is terrible stuff for the kids. And, coupled with the fact that it doesn't do any good, right? There's no benefit to wearing masks. It actually does harm. You're reducing CO2, you're reducing the immune system, like all of these things. Are we going to stand for that? Are we going to send our kids back to school in masks? And if the answer is no, for you and your family, you need to do the work to figure out what we're going to do with our kids to keep them out of school. Maybe it's a day, maybe it's a week or a month or whatever the case may be. Maybe it's moving into a homeschool type situation. Whatever that's going to look like for your family. If that's your line, you need to be ready to draw that line when the time comes. Maybe the line for you is testing. I don't want my kids testing, periodically at work, whatever it is, or at school, whatever it is that's that line for you. It's time to make those preparations, and it's time to be able to put yourself in a position where you can hold the line, where you can refuse compliance, where you can, do the things that we're talking about and not just say the things or vent because we're frustrated about the things, but then come back and say, well, I can't actually do anything about it, right? Yeah. We have to position ourselves, and that means doing the work now, doing the work ahead of time, not reacting, but responding when something comes because we've already made the plan. So that's your kids, right? What about you? What about your work? Maybe you are in education. Maybe you're in healthcare. Maybe you're in another industry that's going to overreact once you start seeing cases go higher of COVID again, right? So if you are in healthcare, for example, are you good with just going back into a mask? Are you good with having to test every week to prove that you're healthy enough to work? If you're in education, are you, in the same boat? Are you cool with just whatever they tell you have to do, you're just going to do it? Or this time around, are we going to say, no, we're not going to comply. We're not going to do this thing. In order to be able to do that, we have to have a plan, right? And again, like we said at the beginning, every family is different. So you might be a single mom, with 3 kids, and, you're trying to do everything you can right now just to keep your head above water. It's going to be a little more difficult for you than maybe if you were a stay-at-home mom and had the ability to just stay home with your kids. But we have to get creative, and we have to say, okay, what are we going to do? Who are we going to call on to be able to help us in this situation? If my job says that I need to start doing these things again, if my job starts mandating things that violate my freedom but violate my conscience as well. Do you know how to go out on stress leave, for example? Do you have a doctor that will be kind of like-minded that would help you with that process? I mean, that's a thought. That's a way that you could go if this stuff is stressing you out to that point. There's things like that can be done. But do we know the process? Are we making the plan now? Are we thinking through these things? Are we coming up with answers ahead of time? What is it that we're going to do? How about our own health? And our own, taking care of ourselves. And I mean, whether it's COVID, whether it's not, a lot of people are getting sick right now. Do we have stuff on hand at the house to make sure that, whether it's medication or supplements or whatever, do we have the things that we need to make sure that we're going to be healthy? Do we have a doctor, that is going to kind of be like-minded and be able to do that? We have one. We're not going to share things online right here, but if you reach out to us privately, we can talk about that. But do we have that kind of stuff in place? Are we watching what we're eating? Are we eating just a ton of processed foods that's killing us? Or are we trying to eat whole, healthy things, to keep ourselves in a place where we're going to stay healthy?
Jimmy's calling me out right now.
I'm calling all of us out right now, right? But we need to be thinking about these things, right? And be able to prepare ourselves so that we can live a life of freedom and live a life that is the life that we want to live. But, we need to be asking ourselves these hard questions, because we don't need to live in fear, right? We don't need to live in fear of a virus. This is what we've said this whole time. We don't need to live in fear of a virus and completely shift everything in life and everything in the world as a result of, some virus that's coming out here. We don't need to live in fear to the point where we're masking and we're jabbing our families with who knows what, just because of some promise that maybe you'll survive. We don't need to, be ready to shut down our businesses so that, we can not spread a virus and blah, blah, blah. Obviously, we don't need to be fearful of those things, but we also don't need to be fearful of what man can do to us. Mm-hmm. We don't need to be fearful of what the government can do to us. And that's where being people of faith comes into play. Being somebody of faith is not just someone who raises their hand and say, I believe in God, right? The Bible says that even the demons believe in God. So being people of faith means that we're people who trust him enough. And we say, okay, I'm going to trust you that if I do the things that you've asked me to do, that you're going to take care of me. And I'm not sick, guys, but when I talk a lot, I don't normally talk a lot, so my voice starts to get all crazy.
That's why I was laughing. I was like, oh, you're over here coughing, man. You got the Rona.
Got the Rona. Sorry, guys.
Sorry. And we're not trying to poke fun of people that actually, have gotten sick and stuff like that. Sometimes I think you just need to kind of make light of things, in serious situations. Sometimes, just because things can get so serious, it's like, oh. So anyways, I'm sorry.
Absolutely.
I hope you guys don't get offended that I made a little joke, because Jimmy actually did get really sick with, they called it COVID pneumonia. Anyways, when was that? 22?
Beginning of 22.
The beginning of 22. Poor guy. He was really sick. So we don't downplay that people.
Yeah.
It was really scary. And we don't downplay that people don't get sick. And I mean, he was extremely sick. Those that knew and stuff, he was bad.
Yeah.
So,
but you can't live in fear, as a result of any of these things. And you have to do what you believe that God is calling you to do. We've believed that God has called us into this fight, to encourage everybody that we can, and to, try to do the things, that we think that God has called us to do. And, we've met so many amazing people along the way, like you guys, that we're so grateful for. But, it is, like I was saying, it's a lot more, being people of faith is a lot more than just acknowledging or saying that we believe in God. It's taking the steps necessary to step out on a limb and trust him when things are difficult. Mm-hmm. It's crazy. In church this morning, I was in teaching kids church, a bunch of kindergartner through sixth graders. And our lesson was on the midwives of Israel way back at the beginning of Exodus, when Pharaoh was trying to say, hey, you need to murder all the baby boys and let the baby girls live. And, there's scripture in there that basically says these midwives feared God more than they feared the king. And, the message even to these children in church today was that, there are times where you have to fear God more than you fear the king. And this is the moment that we're in. This is the moment that we're living in. And honestly, it's the moment we're going to be living in probably to an increased level, over the next few years. And, we have to fear God more than we fear the government or the governor or the president or, whoever it is. If we say, what, God is telling us to live our lives this way, then we have to take the steps necessary. And this is where it becomes a difficult conversation, is that it's more than just getting onto a Facebook page and making comments. It's more than just saying, sharing the meme that we saw that was great. It's more than any of those things, but it's doing the things. It's making the preparations. It's saying, I'm not going to be beholden to my job, so I'm going to make the decisions necessary so that if the time comes where I have to walk away from that job, like I can do so. And I have enough faith in God that he's going to take care of me if I have to do that. If the time comes where I have to pull my kids out of school, I believe God is going to provide for me, but he's going to give us ideas and he's going to give us things that we need to do in order to prepare for those things. Are we getting fact checked on when I was sick?
My mom just said that you were sick the end of 2020. Mom, that was like 2022. It was like January, because it was right when we got back from Sacramento, I remember.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back through some of these comments really quick.
Let's do it.
So Rainbow Odell commented, many parents are nervous, worried about their capability in homeschooling their kids. The truth is, yes, you can homeschool. You can do it. Reach out to local homeschool groups and ask for help. Parents and families are more than willing to help.
Yeah.
And, oh, that's cool. You could share it on there. You're so fancy.
We fancy.
Jimmy's fancy. I don't know how to do that. And that is so incredibly true. And I can speak to that from personal experience. It literally took me years to finally say, okay, we can do this. Like years of breaking down the lies that the enemy was telling me. He was just like, you can't homeschool your kid, and that you definitely can't do it because he has special needs. Like you don't have all the tools and the resources that you need, and how are you going to do all the things and stuff like that. And finally I reached a point to where I was like, no, I can and I will. And we finally took that leap of faith, and it has been so amazing. We're a part of, I'm not going to get all choked up, but we're a part of a truly tremendous homeschool co-op that has been phenomenal. And I'm so grateful for that. So I really love that comment that Rainbow put in there, because you really can homeschool. If you're hearing thoughts that, no, I can't do it, I'm not smart enough, those are lies straight from the pit of hell. They need to go back to where they came from. And yes, you can do it. If you have any questions about homeschooling, I don't consider myself
an expert.
Yeah, I don't consider myself an expert, but I surround myself with experts. So if I don't know the answer, then I probably know somebody who does know the answer. And it's so true. Like I had so many people I had people like letting me borrow curriculum, giving me things, helping me out, giving me resources, different things to do, suggesting different things. And it really has been an incredible journey. So you can do it. Don't let anybody else tell you otherwise. Yeah. And if you need resources, you can reach out to me. I think everybody knows how to get a hold of me because I feel like my phone is always blowing up. Right. But and there's different avenues that you can take within homeschooling. It's not like, it's so amazing. So anyways, I thought that comment was great. There's some fantastic comments on here. And then before I knew who actually commented this, Cassie said off the bench and on the battlefield. And
Mm.
I really feel that, because even today's message at church was talking about putting on your Jordans, like putting on your shoes and getting out there and putting in the work. And I don't wear Jordans. I usually wear flip-flops, but I'm like, let's do this. Like, I got my flip-flops on. Let's go. Like, I'm ready. But that's right. Like, we need to get off the bench and onto the battlefield. And we need to not just talk about it, but we need to be about it. We need to put our words into action. So I think that's great.
Absolutely. No, good stuff. Yeah, there's a lot of great comments. There always is. You guys are so amazing and, so like-minded, and we're always so encouraged, when we come on here and just see, what people are saying, commenting, God didn't give us a spirit of fear, but of a sound mind. Absolutely. Guys, so like when, we can be led by peace, and we can be led, if something is causing us fear and anxiety, we know that's not coming from the Lord. He's not a God of fear and anxiety. He's a God of peace and sound mind. And so, that's one way that we can be led, even in the midst of turmoil and chaos and incredibly crazy things. I mean, you had, like in the Bible, Daniel sleeping in the lion's den with all these lions that were supposed to eat him. And, God will lead us into peace. Other comments, and if you're on Facebook, I can't see who you are, so I apologize, but no, we must stand up and stand together, demand our freedom to say no, not again. Absolutely. It's going to be we the people. It's going to be we the people who are going to stand up and make the change. Mm-hmm. One says, here, community voices are, didn't show up. Community voices are, Paul's a warrior. Sure. How about, yes, absolutely. That one too. But community voices are very loud, right? Yeah. So, those of us who are in the community, and that's not even necessarily, community going to, speak at different agencies or any of that kind of stuff, but community with your neighbors, community with your coworkers, community with parents of the people or the kids your kids go to school with. Just being loud in the community. And that doesn't even necessarily mean obnoxious, but just, speaking out what you believe and just saying no, and we're not going to go and do that stuff again. So, all kinds of different things here. I'm just trying to read through some comments. Gilbert, hi Gilbert. Gilbert saying, God says in Numbers 33:53, take possession of the land and settle in it, because I've given it to you to occupy. Gilbert, you're going to make me start preaching. Because, that's right on. We are called to occupy the land and not just roll over. God called us to disciple nations, not just individual people. And that's something that we need to be doing here.
He also called us to be salt and light.
Yeah, absolutely. So good stuff. Here was one I wanted to bring up here. And again, I can't see who this is, so I apologize. I teach special ed at VCIS. And we are inundated with mental health issues this year, far and above anything that we've ever seen. Yeah, and this is the story that we're hearing over and over and over again, is that mental health stuff is just off the charts crazy. And I will issue a little bit of a warning. I don't want to get too deep in on this, but be cautious of the mental health treatments that is coming, that's government sponsored, especially in California. So the stuff that's coming into your schools, all of this stuff about social emotional learning, transformative social emotional learning, like all of that stuff that seems really good on the surface, really does have a dark motivation behind it. But, I encourage you to get, help for your kids, to love on them, to be having conversations with them about, life is not just going to get pulled out from under you, and everything's going to be okay. Filling them with faith and not fear, taking them to Christian counselors, if need be. But our kids really are suffering. And the other thing I'll mention is be careful how you're talking about this stuff in front of your kids. Like, understand that little ears are listening. And so even if we're having this conversation and, it's on and the kids are listening in the background, it's easy for little ears to hear things and pick up on fears, that we have. Oh my gosh, we're going back into a lockdown again. Oh my gosh, I'm going to have to wear a mask at school again. Sometimes the conversations that we have with other adults are fine for other adults, but little ears can grab onto those things and it can put them in a really bad place. So just be cautious, of what conversations we're having with our kids. And, we do have an epidemic on our hands when it comes to the mental health of our kids. And, we need the churches to step up and the people of faith to really kind of step up and fill some of that void. Let's see, going back through comments. I love this one. By failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail. That says Benjamin Franklin. I can't verify if that's who said that, but the truth is there for sure.
I think it was Melissa Williams that commented or that posted it.
So on off the bench and onto the battlefield is another great one. Yes. So good stuff. Pamela, you up earlier. I didn't want to ignore your question you asked about the Reedley lab. I'm trying to find it. Hold on just 1 second. There you are. So Pamela has asked, can you give us your thoughts on the Reedley lab? My thought on the Reedley lab is, does it really surprise you? I mean, seeing what we've seen and knowing what we know, does it really surprise you?
I don't know that it really surprises people, but I think it concerns people. I mean, I don't know, maybe It does surprise some people. Sometimes I feel like I get surprised and then I wonder, why am I surprised? Really, Marilyn? Things still surprise you at this point? But I guess.
I mean, this one hits close to home, right?
I think that's kind of what gets people is they're like, whoa, this was in our backyard, and that's concerning.
Yeah. I hope that something comes of it. I'm not overly optimistic. It seems like the county of Fresno and the city of Fresno and different people are barking at each other and turning it political, which is we're not surprised by that either, right? These people, seriously.
Well, I think David Valadeo had put out a poll on Facebook where he was talking about the lab in Reedley and should Congress investigate it or something like that. And I said, I think our politicians should be investigated.
Should be investigated, probably.
That's what I think should be investigated. What do I know?
But the thing about the Reedley lab, for me, is they were making COVID tests, which tells me it's another reason I don't want to ever stick those things up my nose. And they were making pregnancy tests. Unfortunately, I'm not at the stage in my life where I need to take pregnancy tests. So I'm not necessarily worried about that. But, it's a weird combination, right? And we could get all into the weeds about, why they were making that combination of stuff. But, I'm like, man, does it really surprise you? I think if truth comes out, there's probably a whole bunch of those labs that are operating in a whole bunch of little towns all over the place everywhere. And, again, it comes down to the fact that I can look at all of those things and I can chase all those things and follow all those things and be inundated with those things. But I trust God, I trust God completely to take care of me and my family. And we may have one of those labs next door to our house, and I still trust God that he's going to take care of us. And I pray for justice. I pray for light to be shown on all those things. And I pray that we wouldn't be, kept in the dark, and it would all be revealed and brought to light. But at the end of the day, for me and my family, we're going to trust God completely. Okay, we're going to get into more questions and comments here. What do we got? 29th year with VUSD. Will not comply. We were bullied last time via district office, but stood united at our school and will do it again. Do we know who that is? Christina. Great. That's awesome. That's exactly the spirit that we need with that. If you guys all say no, what are they going to do? Fire you? They're going to fire all of you? If one person sticks their head up.
What's the administration going to do if they have no teachers or janitors or aides?
They'd be going into classrooms and then cleaning toilets is what they'd be doing. But no, and that's exactly it. You know, you guys have that community of teachers, right? You know the people who are like-minded. And so it's up to you and it's up to us and it's up to all of us to just be encouraging people. One thing we've been able to see is that in most cases, it was a bluff. You know, I know somebody who was in the military, you know, in the Marines, and they were saying, you know, man, I was basically bullied into getting a Johnson & Johnson shot, and then found out, you know, a few weeks after I did it, that they weren't actually going to fire anybody. And, you know, that was what we were trying to encourage people to just hold out, hold the line, because, you know, even then we knew it was a bluff. And now we definitely know that it's a bluff.
It's time to put on our poker face.
Poker face? Your non-bluffing poker face?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Power in numbers. Absolutely.
Yeah, I like that.
So, you know, good stuff. So guys, we didn't want to take all afternoon. We know it's Sunday night. You guys have family time, so do we, and all that fun stuff. But we did want to get in here. That's true. Can we say we prepared for that? But the thing is, you know, we did want to get on here. We wanted to address it. And so are things coming our way? Are we going to see the masks again? Are we going to see all this? Probably. You know, it's an election year. We're coming into winter. You know, all of these things would indicate that we probably are going to see a bunch of this stuff come back. But do we need to fear it? No, we don't need to fear it. Keep yourself informed. Get a plan together for you and your family. Talk to your spouse. Talk to your kids. Figure out where's your line? Like, where's the line that you're going to say, no, that's enough. We're not going to do this. And then make a plan. Make a plan for your kids. Make a plan for your job. Make a plan for your home. Make a plan for your health, you know, and just start to walk those things out. Put yourself in a position to be able to live in freedom. Guys, this is not about what they do to us. It's about what we do to prepare ourselves to live a life of freedom. The reality is freedom is an inside job. It has little to do with what other people are going to do to us. It has everything to do with how we are on the inside, how we are here in our minds, and how we've prepared ourselves to be able to live a life in freedom. So what we want to leave you with is this: do not comply to the craziness and the garbage that's out there in the world and the things that are going to be coming back. Hold the line. Do not comply, and prepare yourself, prepare your life to be able to make that a reality. Not just a Facebook reality, but an actual life reality where we're not complying and we're not willing to do those things. So we'll try to be more in touch. We'll do these lives and stuff more often. We'll bring on some people and have some really good conversations again. We're getting off the bench, Cassie, and into the game. But you know, the bottom line is be prepared, be ready, but do not fear. So thank you. We love you all. Happy to see you again. This is so much fun. And we enjoy getting together with you and all of those things.
We wish it was under different circumstances, though.
Right? Yeah, for sure.
But
anyway, we love you. We will catch you soon, and enjoy the rest of your